Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of an absolutely fantastic novel. It was riveting, it was scary, it was very moving, it was a lot of things, and I'm so excited to talk about it. So, welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. My name is Koji A, and my book is called Casual, and it is a blend of sci-fi and horror that focuses on neural implants and pregnancy.
It is so good. I have had such a good time reading it, and I am so glad that it kind of fell into my life via a book talk I went to. Before we get into the book itself, could you talk a little bit about your career up to this point? When did you start writing, and sort of what was your journey to this project?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I started, well, I'm one of those people who always knew I wanted to be a writer, and then I just kind of kept putting it off my whole life. And I really started writing in 2018 when I was on maternity leave. I live in Bulgaria, and so I have 2 years of maternity. And that's a good chunk of time that you can bond with a baby and write a novel. So I started in 2018. I focused a lot on short stories at first. I have several short stories published. And then last year I published a novella called Mazi. And then this is my first full-length novel. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to know more about the inception of this book, of Casual. I did read on your website, which is fantastic, by the way. It's one of the most beautiful author websites I've ever seen. Um, you say childbirth is the closest thing to an eldritch experience that you've had. So is that the origin for this project then?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very closely born of, ironically, I wrote it after my second child was born, but it's more inspired by the pregnancy and childbirth of my first child. Um, I went into pregnancy not really knowing what was going to happen, as I think a lot of women do. Like we're told, oh, yay, pregnancy is fun and exciting. But we're not necessarily educated about all of the scary aspects of pregnancy, including mental changes. And so I went through a lot of mental changes during my pregnancy, including experiencing high levels of anxiety, something called pregnancy rage. It was all very new to me, and I wanted to explore that in a book. And up until then, I know there's a lot of general fiction that have pregnant main characters, and there's some horror that concentrates on pregnancy and especially postpartum. But I didn't see a lot of sci-fi that concentrated on pregnancy, and that kind of was something that I wanted to contribute to the genre.
Mm. Yeah, I'm really interested in your approach to genre here. Repeat listeners are probably sick of hearing me say this, but I often like to think of genre as like instead of a sort of category you pick to put your project into, it's more like a buffet that you can sort of choose and select from and sort of use to shape your project. What was sort of in your genre buffet beyond what you've talked about? Like, what I love about genre is that like it also creates like rules and expectations that you then get to either like fulfill or subvert. Yeah, so you could talk about that a little.
Yeah, so I will say when I started writing casual, I was very much a fantasy writer and a science fiction writer. I did not write horror at all, or I didn't think I wrote horror. I learned later that I'm very much a horror writer. But so as far as like the genre of sci-fi, I really wanted to kind of bring in the meeting of the personal experience with the influence of time and the influence of society with the person. And I think that that's something that sci-fi does really, really well. I mean, you look like historically at like the big sci-fi writers, it's all a question of like a social moment. And I think like technology, especially like the technology of screens, neural implants are becoming a thing right now. I think it's a really important intersection to look at, and I think sci-fi as a genre does that or has the ability to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'd love to, talk about the game itself that is sort of at the center of this, that functions either with an implant or with a phone. Let's talk about casual, how it sort of functions in the life of the person using it. And were there games or experiences that you used to shape sort of the way that it presents?
Right. Okay. So casual in the book is, as you said, it either available on a phone or an implant. Um, and most people want the implant. Not everyone can afford the implant. And most people use it as a form of distraction, a form of gaming, kind of like we do doom scrolling on your phone, playing games like Candy Crush. I will say I played a lot of Candy Crush during my first pregnancy. It was a great distraction for me. And specifically for the main character in my book, this pregnant woman, Valia, she has a prescription for casual, and it is used to help balance her neurotransmitters. And so it keeps her from falling into depression or having panic attacks. And so it basically, the implants monitor her neurotransmitters, and then in response, it tells her to play this game that kind of soothes her, and it acts as a pacifier. Um, it's actually very much based on a casual game that one of my friends introduced me to in 2010. It's a game called Two Dots, and it's just a game where you like sweep across the screen and you match dots, and it's very, very soothing, and it's very, very neutral colors and pretty and fun. And yeah, so that was kind of the basis of the game.
Yeah, that made me think a lot about, that it sort of skirts the being like entertainment and also being like pharmacology, right? Like it
Mhm.
blurs those lines. And it got me thinking a lot about you know, do those things function the same way in our current society? So that leads me to the world building question about old and new Sophia. Can you tell us a little bit about what has happened in this world and what shaped your depiction of Sophia here?
Yeah, so in my mind, when I was building this world, I was thinking of it maybe like 80 years in the future. And it was after, honestly, I didn't have the event in my head. It's either after a climate collapse or after World War III.
Mhm.
Either one would, in my mind, create this world that's very isolated, where they have pockets of cities. No one lives outside of the cities. The air quality is very low, very dangerous to health. And travel is heavily, heavily restricted just simply because people can't afford to be harming the environment by traveling. Um, and so that's kind of the world that it's set in. And it's set in Sofia simply because I live in Bulgaria. And so I didn't feel comfortable setting it somewhere in like the United States at this point because I haven't been there in so long. Um, but yeah, so that's why it's kind of set in. I wanted not such like a big, well-known city because I didn't want to focus on the location as much as the character.
That makes a ton of sense to me. Yeah, because the book is really tied very closely to Valia's perspective. It really like you get to sort of spend the book in her head. Um, let's talk about the situation she finds herself in. So she is pregnant and she is offered, not offered, she is told that she has to stop using casual because of the imminent birth of her child. Then she meets somebody who makes a very interesting offer, this sort of like new iteration of casual. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much right from the get-go in the book, she's offered the chance to put a companion implant into her baby, and this will allow her to keep her implant. And the person who is offering to give her this companion implant is, very rich, very powerful. She's in control of the company that makes these implants. The thing about the companion implant is it's not tested. It's been tested on like a handful of babies with mixed results. And so it's very, very dangerous. And so the book really focuses on Valia trying to decide whether she is able to be a parent without the medication that she's used to, and whether it's worth her being a good parent, like to risk putting it into her baby as well.
Mm. And there's a lot of different voices sort of telling her different things, different sort of aspects of this question and telling her to approach it in different ways. Um, the interesting thing I kind of think about, Valia as a person and as a character and in the world that she exists in, the world really got me thinking a lot about like late capitalism and how
Mhm.
sort of entertainment and maybe pharmacology function in that world. And also why it makes Valia so distrustful. She really has a lot of trouble trusting people. Um, but like, how do you trust anyone when everybody's getting paid, right? So like her doctor is telling her to do one thing, but like he's getting paid, and the representative is telling her another thing. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about like sort of maybe like kind of shaped the perspectives of the other characters like on this sort of central question?
Oh, yeah. So she has her what in the book is called a psycher, which is something between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Um, and he has his own interests for wanting to enroll her into this program. And this was very much based on my own experiences with my psychologist and my psychiatrist. I will say I had a very wonderful psychiatrist that I worked with like after my pregnancy. She was absolutely understanding. She was not like the psycher in the book. Um, but definitely they do medical professionals, mental health professionals come at, I mean, from my personal perspective, they come at everything with their own baggage and their own pressures, whether that is necessarily capitalism or the need to publish, the need to continue their research, the need to be a voice in their field. Like everyone is constantly under pressure. And I feel like the only person in the book who's not really under pressure to perform would be Emerson, who owns the company. Every other person, the doctor who is telling her not to put the implant in her baby, the psychologist who is telling her to put the implant in her baby, they're both they want what's best for her, but they also have their own pressures in their own lives that shape what they think.
Yeah, and that's a lot to navigate as a mother to be when your life is about to transition incredibly. You're feeling a lot of different feelings. Yeah, like the book really brings you very close to Valia, and I kind of love her just as like sort of a like she's a little bit messy kind of as a character, obviously, but she is so really deeply sympathetic because you can see the just how hard it would be to navigate all these different influences at a very, very vulnerable time. Um, could we talk a little bit about the cover art and the illustrations that are sort of peppered throughout? Because both of them are absolutely phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the cover art is by Christina Benzina. And this was picked by the team at Tenebros. They picked her as the artist. My only request when requesting an artist was that I wanted to work with a femme artist or non-binary artist, simply because of the content of the book. So I wanted to make sure that there was like a consistent femme or non-binary feel to the book. And they picked Christina, and I didn't have any idea what the cover was going to be until they sent it to me, and I absolutely love it. And my favorite part is the little pregnant woman in the corner. It's just like I feel like Christina really, really caught the feel of casual with like the technological aspects, but also like the messy, as you said, aspects of the mental health. And then the internal art was actually kind of a surprise. I had no idea that it was even going to be there until like really like near when the book was published. The internal art is by Helen Wistbury, and their art is just absolutely fantastic. I feel like their art just really, really blends like geometric with natural, and I feel like it captures the game, like the gaming experience of the that I wrote about in the book. Like it captures the um, skin that Valia uses for her game. And so, yeah, I had very little, no input on the art, but I am absolutely thrilled with it. Like,
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And what you were just saying about the cover really does make me think that, like, something one of my friends said when she was pregnant, when I was asking her how she was feeling, like towards the end of the pregnancy, um she's like, I feel incredibly big and also incredibly small. And I was like, I think I know what you mean.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, absolutely. That encaptures pregnancy really well.
Yeah. Um, so let's talk a little bit about what's next for you. I know that you also have a cosmic horror coming out in May. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. So I have, it's a novella coming out with Ghost Orchid Press, and it's called Hold My Heart. And it is about a woman who hires a serial killer to kill her. And at the last minute decides that she doesn't want to go through with the murder, and instead starts a sexual relationship with her would-be killer. Um, Except her would-be killer is possessed by an eldritch beast. It's a really dark novella, but also I think really fun. It was really fun to write.
Amazing. That sounds great too. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk about casual with us and introducing us to your next project. Yeah, I'm very excited to see what's next. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me. This was a lovely discussion.
Well, thank you. Okay, listeners, please check out Casual. It is out in the world now, so please head to your favorite website or bookstore or library, wherever you like to go for your books. It is now time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.